Well, I have delayed doing this long enough, but yeah, I need to crack into this thing and get some of those parts in place. I've got something is plugging up one of the idle jets that bounces in and out. It's not just that it's stuck; it's like it comes and goes. So sometimes it idles at like 1300, and sometimes it's 7. And then there's something in one of the mains too, and of course that impacts peak power. And as I'm driving just casually down the road, it sounds and whatnot like it's behaving itself, but you can tell it's lean because every now and then it pops, and just an indication that it's too lean. So, got the stand out. I'll probably put it on the stand. Maybe I'll put this on fast forward or something like that. I usually don't show stuff like this because it's kind of dull, but why not? So moving on with the project. Of course, these things always get dirt in them. So anyway, what I picked up is this right here. And I know that doesn't look like much, but this is an extremely fine stainless steel mesh. It wasn't terribly expensive. It's just kind of an industrial product. You don't really buy it for consumers. It's kind of a wholesale product. But anyway, here and there, I'm going to try and shape a couple little pieces of this to see if I can't stop stuff from plugging the jets up. All right, so I've been digging through the carbs a little tiny bit here, and I think what's going on is I'm getting some minute pieces of rust coming in, making their way past all the filters. They get down here into the bottom of the bowls, and they seem to be at that point kind of combining into flakes, and then periodically I will get a flake that works its way into the system. Sometimes it shuts down an idle jet, sometimes it's the main jets. It's going back and forth. It's never consistent. So what I've done with that mesh is I have created a little tiny additional filter that fits right across the top there. But other than that, everything seems to be pretty good. I did not find anything. Air correctors were good. Emulsion tubes good. These are main jet holders. Here's the main jets. The main jets, there's no crud in the main jets. Where are my idlers? Idler. Another idler. And they all look good. So, as I said, I think it's just an issue of those chunks of rust combining, flaking, and then plugging. So I was looking at the screens that I dropped in there. And of course, they fit right down this area. And I had them kind of folded in such a way that they would kind of clamp the ridge that runs across here. And of course, I took the carb and you turn it upside down and kind of go like this. And after a bit, it would fall off. So I decided that was not going to be good enough to survive the harsh environment that we have inside the engine compartment with all that vibration. So I figured what I needed to do is find some way to kind of clamp it in place. So I needed to be able to experiment. I wanted to find something that was about the same diameter. So I went digging through all the crud that I have, and I found that right there. And that's about as close as you can possibly get. Anyway, it happens to be the end of a propane torch. And what that allowed me to do, I could take one of those little screens, and I could fold it across the top of the propane torch. I could then take some baling wire, wrap the baling wire around, throw a couple of turns and twists on the baling wire, so the baling wire would of course crimp down on the screen around this. And then once I'd had it crimped down, you then take your baling wire and tighten it up just a little bit more. And what you're left with is something that looks a little bit like that. And this diameter is ever so slightly larger than that diameter. So I then took this and pinched it just a little tiny bit so that it was slightly oval instead of being round. And then when you drop it in and press on it, yep, that's pretty well seated. You can then sit there look at that, huh? That doesn't come loose. And hopefully that will keep any of those flakes and small nuggets of rusty crud from working its way into the jets. Get some light going there. How about that? Okay, so this is the dirty one anyway. The fuel mixture comes in at idle right in that little hole. In that little tiny hole. And about 1/16 of an inch. It's the only drill bit I've got anyway. It's about the right size. It's just, I think, slightly tinier than that hole. Anyway, I ran it down. Get any crud that was built up in there out of it. And then I began looking down the hole with my little flashlight there, trying to figure out why it is that this one doesn't seem to shut off and this one does. And I knew it was because of the corrosion, but the corrosion's really not all that bad. So I took the screw That would be this guy, the needle. And just basically ran it down, got it tight, and then ran it down even more so that the corrosion that was in there, you got little pits and ridges. I could take the ridges and basically try and collapse the ridges down so that it would have a smooth surface again. And I don't know, I guess I managed to cram it down maybe an extra third of a turn. That's not too bad. So it's, it's definitely smoother than it used to be. And that doesn't mean it's going to work quite right, but I think it should be better than it was. I was going to try and do some stuff with JB Weld, but looking at the way it works, I just decided JB Weld was not going to be the way I needed to go. Alright, I don't know if you can see how nice and clean it is in there. Wow, this car has probably not been that clean since prior to my purchasing it. But I've cleaned up all the crud and whatnot in anticipation of putting in the seal. Just going to go down there. Again, let's take a closer look just in case you decide to get a seal. You can ask me whether or not this one worked and lasted. Alright, so I'm running dual carbs, right? So if you're running dual carbs, you don't need the heat risers. So I got the heat risers on this particular manifold. And got my old Sawzall out because I've got a new tool. I figured I'd put it to use. And I chopped these suckers off really quick. And I was all prepared to take this thing off to the Midas place and have these things welded shut. It turns out they're not actually punched through at all. So I don't need to do that. That was really, really nice. Of course, I used my Dremel to make these things less jaggedy. They were quite sharp when I was done with that Sawzall. And this is getting old and tired. There is, let me see if I can show you. I don't know if you can see a little bit of light shining through. Right there. There's a hole in this manifold. And that, right at that point, is going to be letting out some noise, and that doesn't make me happy. So at some point this is going to be getting replaced. I don't know if I'm going to do it now, but sometime in the next year probably. That goes away. Coming along, spent some time cleaning in here. It is much brighter than it used to be, and you can of course stick your hand in there and pull it away, and it's not covered in greasy slime. And I pulled out the old seal. This is a brand new seal. Got this guy popped in yesterday. Oh, that's nice. Get this thing sealed. Get it sealed up. So let's see if you can see that right there. That is a leftover hole from the air conditioning system. And I've got a bunch of plugs. Okay, there's a plug. There's a plug. That's all air conditioning. I believe these two over here are for the evaporative canister system that I don't run anymore, so I've plugged them up. Somehow or another I managed to miss this one, but I've got a fresh plug. I'm going to pop that in there and put a little bit of the caulk in there to seal it up good and tight. And there it is. Okay, so while I was doing the rest of that stuff, I've also been working on this. You might notice that it is a slightly different color than it used to be. Let us take a look at some of the things that I've done while in here that go beyond the color. Alright, since I got rid of the heat risers on the manifold, that left me with holes here and over there. So I went out and picked up a pop riveter, cut just a couple of little pieces, and pop riveted that in place so that I now don't have massive holes in my boundary between what's up and what's down. What else did I do here? I picked up right here. I've never had bolts that attached. I'm not running this factory tin. I've got the super cool tins, so they don't tie into anything down in this area. So I bought a 3-bolt nylock style through bolt so it doesn't vibrate loose. One there and one over there. To take that and tie it all in real nice. What else did I do? Of course I cleaned. It was all covered in oily crud and whatnot. But this particular piece back here, the front piece of tin, you know, because I'm not running a doghouse, I don't have a hole right here. So this is an early style tin. And I get the feeling there must be something slightly different between the early tins and the doghouse tin, because there's like a ½ inch gap right down there. It's like this piece of sheet metal is too short. So I put in, if this is viewable, I think you can see that, a little teeny piece of extra sheet metal right there. It's about a ½ inch. Which forces this particular piece of tool tin down. And that tool tin is, of course, this one. So this guy fits the way it's supposed to, a lot more solid. Lock it down. So that's real nice. And of course I'm not concerned that it matches the color of the car. My main reason for going with a light colored paint is when you drop stuff in here, and you're gonna drop stuff, it's hard to find what you dropped against all that blackness if you paint it black. So I've never been a fan of the black. It's a Krylon color. Let's check it out over here. What does it say? Oops, sorry, it's Harbor Blue. Okay, so right here we can see one of the main reasons I had for pulling the motor out. I had 48-year-old transaxle mounts right there, and they were pretty tired. So, you know, these are empty replacements. I think I spent about $10 each. For some reason they were not the same price. So like one was $8 and one was 10, something like that. I don't know, around 10 each. Anyway, the bar that runs underneath there, I had a bit of rust on the far side of it over there, because there's like a ledge and it catches dirt and gets wet. So anyway, while I had it out, I cleared the rust off and then threw some paint on it, so that's why it looks all kind of black and shiny. But yeah, while I had it out, I also did some cleaning in here, so this is all nice, and it's not too bad now. Not great, but it's not bad. Alright, while I had everything out and apart, I've cleaned this up. A little sandpaper, give it kind of a brushed look to it. And this guy had some oxidation and crud on it, so I've cleaned that up. Again, it's now got kind of a brushed look to it. Not so much on that surface. I might do a little bit more work here. But that's really nice and clean. And then moving on, I've done the alternator. So it's clean. Not covered in grease and stuff. And again, I cleaned it and I also sandpapered a little bit. So that looks a little bit better than it used to. The backing plate, I'm going to paint probably the same color as my rims, kind of a silvery color at some point. And then up here at the top, this is all just sandpaper. So I cleaned up all the paint that was on here and just kind of gave it that brushed look, and I really like the brushed look. I mean, if you take that and you combine it with this guy right here, I think that's going to look real nice. Just got to get a little bit of silver on that right there. And here's the last piece that I've got to work on. This cooler is, you know, it's good enough to get the job done. I just need to be able to get the air to flow through it properly so that I get the proper kind of oil cooling. And I'm not entirely sure at this point how to go about doing it. Okay, you can see it just barely grabs a little tiny bit of the hole, but in general that's about as much as I want. I want it to be able to pull about that much air through here. Like I say, it's around 10%. Pull about 10% through this and you will cool the hell out of your oil. And then it runs through the rest of the system and cools off the rest of the system. But yeah, that's going to be a trick, because it needs to be tilted slightly. It's too flat. I need to get it, and this gap right here has got to be reduced. It's got to tilt back towards the fan shroud. That way, it's too tight right now up against the firewall. If I tilt that edge back, then I got a nice gap over here to pull there. Well, anyway, I decided to split this one into two pieces. This is basically to pull it apart, get everything pretty much ready to get back into the engine compartment. And I'm going to stand out here in the rain for just a sec, but yeah, I've got a big old mess going on here. It's like from one end to the other, my kitchen as well. Hopefully in the next week, though, I will be putting everything back.